Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. Come to me, all you who labor and are burdened, and I will give you rest, says the Lord. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory to you, Lord.
When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain, and after he had sat down, his disciples came to him. He began to teach them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the land. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the clean of heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are they who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when they insult you and persecute you and utter every kind of evil against you falsely because of me. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward will be great in heaven. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Some time ago, I was riding my bicycle to the seminary. We're testing the bicycles. It was a little flat, but it still worked. And the wheels were flat. And as I was riding, I was in my habit. I got a number of remarks along the way. One is, you go, Father. This one lady was riding by, you go, Father. I think she was Catholic because she knew I wasn't a Mormon. And another person thought I was a Mormon. And but one lady kind of chased me down in her van, and she had been pumping gas at the nearby gas station on Linwood, and she was crying out to the Lord for some issue she had in her life. And then I came riding by in my brown habit on a bicycle, so I guess she took that as a sign to chase this strangely dressed religious figure. And very friendly, and as she was talking, she said, I've made mistakes in my life, but Jesus has been talking to me, a lot lately, and like she prays all morning long, and I guess as I was listening to her, and I said, well, it's really important you be under spiritual authority, and maybe it's your pastor, and she said that's probably the only person I really feel I could go to, because he would understand this kind of stuff, that things were happening to her and all that. And but it reminded me that there are saints. I'm not canonizing her, but there are holy people, Christians, be they Catholic or not, who are seriously striving to be close to Christ and to listen to His word, hear His, hear Him speaking if it's something like that, and do His will. And putting the holy in our culture is difficult, but it has to begin with putting the holy in Catholic culture. So we have these holy days of obligation that punctuate our church year to remind us that there is a higher supernatural culture, a church culture, and the heavenly one, that we're called to arrange our lives around to help, even without words, evangelize our world and our culture, our American culture. So the holy days of obligation really should be treated like a Sunday, like a Sabbath. And that's kind of, even that is a bit revolutionary for us Catholics. That's why I have my computer out, because I didn't bring the sheet. There's a great article recently on this in the National Catholic Register. When you think about, we have 6 holy days of obligation. 2 of them are pretty easy to observe, right? You have Christmas. Well, most things are closed for Christmas. Even non-Christians celebrate Christmas. In the Holy Land, even the Palestinian Muslim kids, dress like Santa, and they want Christmas gifts from Santa. So we actually, it happens in some of our Catholic schools. And then the Ascension is usually moved to Sunday in most dioceses, and certainly this one. So that only leaves 4 holy days of obligation left. The hardest one is Mary, Mother of God, because people are hungover from New Year's Eve, right? If they're not thinking intentionally about that special day, her primary title and duty and role as the divine maternity. So that takes some intentionality on the part of Catholics not to be up so late you miss Mass. And then the others, the Assumption, All Saints, and so forth. And so I do want to do a little catechesis on this, because I think it's important, that we try to be intentional as we only have Christmas left, but in the new year, how can I observe holy days of obligation like the Sabbath and have that kind of Sabbath spirit with me? Well, we have to be intentional. And putting the holy in holy days is not always easy, but I think there's some things we can do. One, if they fall on a Saturday or Monday, the precept of attending Mass is abrogated. Okay, that's mumbo-jumbo for you don't have to go to Mass. It's a holy day, but not of obligation. But still go if you can, because it's a holy day. So I think if you can make this year, like if today falls tomorrow, you wouldn't have to go. But it'd still be good to go on All Saints Day, even if it's not obligatory. Secondly, if you're an employer, can you be closed on that day? So there was a story, an example in that article of 2 brothers. I think they were of Italian background, given their last name. And they have a 17-employee auto body shop company. And they're in Birmingham, Alabama, right in the heart of the Bible Belt, right? Out of their 17 employees, 16 are Catholic, 16 are Protestant, 1 is Catholic. They closed with pay. Now that's going to rouse some conversation, especially among the Protestant ones, maybe the Catholic one. And this was for the Assumption, so this was earlier in the year. And it's a great, non-forceful way to raise the evangelization question. Well, Mary is so important for us as the God-bearer, the Theotokos, the mother of Jesus, the mother of God, that we need to honor her being brought back to heaven, in that case the Assumption, with a holy day, the holy day of obligation. So, it's one way that we can honor the feast day. So, not going to work, if that's possible, is one way. And I'm not trying to give you a guilt trip. This is like for the future and thinking about it, trying to be intentional. But going to Mass, especially if that's not part of what we have to do that if it's obligatory. And then celebrating in some fashion, with the day. Today we'll have just a simple cake reception if you have time to hang around. But I think that's kind of what we should do for Sundays anyways, doing works of mercy. And we transmit the Catholic faith not just by what we say, by what we do. Catechism says on Sundays and other holy days of obligation, the faithful are to refrain from engaging in work or activities that hinder the worship owed to God, the joy proper to the Lord's day, the performance of works of mercy, and the appropriate relaxation of mind and body. So notice the 4 things: worship, joy, mercy, and relaxation. That's actually takes some work to do. It's hard to relax on a work day, right? And so in the future, if that is possible, especially the work part of it, I encourage that, because it's kind of like the reverence for the Blessed Sacrament and believing in the real presence. We are hopefully learning from the last Pew study, where only 31% of Catholics actually believe in the real presence. That is, after the consecration, Jesus is actually on the altar and not a symbol of him. That Eucharistic faith is not just taught but caught. Same with holy days of obligation. By doing something different, or Ash Wednesday, it's not a holy day of obligation, but we actually treat it more like one than the other ones. People notice our actions, not just our words. Words are cheap and plentiful. But when we give people a day off with pay, when we close, don't go to work, do other things like that, I think it's a way of communicating and evangelizing. So today we are reminded that the most important questions that we can ask ourselves on All Saints' Day: will I grow in holiness, go to heaven, and see Jesus face to face? Will I be at the everlasting family reunion in heaven? How do I become holy and go to heaven with all the holy ones? Well, Jesus teaches us through his holy church that we become holy by living the Beatitudes. You know, one of my favorite sermons to give is on the Mount of Beatitudes, of the Beatitudes. And I took a little work and research to what to say on each one. For an example, today we've been talking about us volunteers about threats against some Catholic high schools, during Mass, like violence or bombings or whatever. And so blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. This is not just for those grieving the loss of a loved one. It's grieving that the world isn't as it should be, as the Messiah wants it to be, Jesus of Nazareth, right? And that it is falling short of God's covenant standards. And we're not talking about white lies or little acts of selfishness, helping myself to the last candy bar when, the other friars wanted it. We're talking about, just like violence for no reason, or pure greed or selfishness, or horrible, acts of, disrespecting people, or wars, the big ones. And so that grieves us. And so part of what the Beatitudes call us to, in counter-distinction from our culture, is a lifestyle that corresponds to them. Some austerity and simplicity and frugality in life. Being honest when other people are cheating on their taxes. Mm-hmm. Being generous. Doing, they say, good deeds anonymously, acts of loving kindness. Saint Therese, the little flower. I read this because this applies to all of us on our path to sanctity, and it's doable for all of us. She wanted to do little things out of love to charm the heart of Christ. When she wanted to scowl, she smiled. When she wanted to complain, she praised. When she wanted to be lazy, she worked. We can hold back a bitter reply when we're tempted to get verbal revenge. We can also look for opportunities to serve others without recognition. Therese loved the amusing challenge of finding ways to do good deeds anonymously. She took the worst spot during laundry duty. She gave the last swig of apple cider, we could think of other swigs, to the thirsty sister sitting next to her. She smiled without fail at the most vexing nun in the convent. Do you know how hard that is? Mm-hmm. She showed her love for Jesus every day in minutiae like this. You see, some people who take the 144,000 in the first reading literally forget that the crowd that they're part of is uncountable. That's all our grandmothers and grandfathers, our parents, our neighbor next door, or the little lady in the back pew, and I don't mean Margaret back there, praying the rosary that nobody notices, but her rosary is upholding the church that is being attacked from outside and within. These are the unofficial, uncanonized, unofficial saints that are in heaven. And that's what we celebrate All Saints' Day to remember. It's not just the big shots or those who are counted or official, but all of us, all in heaven, they are saints. And that is our invitation. We, brothers and sisters, I think as the smoke of Satan confuses us in the church, and we don't know who to believe. I tell people, believe the perennial teaching that's always been taught. We have to keep our eyes on the prize. In some ways, being saved is not hard. We die in a state of grace. And even the thief on the cross, a murderer, can be saved. On the other hand, if you want to avoid purgatory and go straight to heaven, like the Monopoly game, right? we do need to do some acts of penance on earth. The first penance, just like Fatima's message tells us, is accept the challenges and crosses of your life without complaining. It's not just accepting them, because we can accept and complain at the same time. Then we haven't fully accepted. You know, like, God, I want her cross. It's always so much nicer. It's lighter, it's shinier, no one knows how I suffer. And that's true. People don't, but that's why it's a cross. And that's where your merit lies. So in this fall season, as we see the leaves, beautiful as they are in their final burst of life dying, we always have to die to ourselves, integrate some self-denial, some asceticism, some mortification, which means death, as a healthy Catholic spiritual lifestyle, so that we don't overindulge in the culture or in the excess of the American way of life. The American way of life ain't the Beatitudes, and there's a big difference. And we have to close the gap in our own life, so that we will be part of that uncountable crowd, waving the palm branches, wearing the white, and singing praise to our Father of mercies for the unfathomable mercy he has shown us all our life long, in minutia and in the big things. So brothers and sisters, what is one thing you need to do to be a saint? We have the Blessed Mother and Saint Joseph to help us. You know, we Catholics believe that when we die, we're more powerful by grace in heaven than even when we're on earth. But what is one thing you need to do to make a step forward in becoming a saint? Praying to your patron saint? Doing some fasting or self-denial on Fridays? Reading scripture at least 1 to 5 minutes a day? Going to daily Mass, not just Sunday Mass? Praying your rosary daily? That's hard enough. Every day, day in and day out. You know, there are many things we can do. Pick one. Pick one, and you're already that much more of a saint. All the holy saints and men and women, pray for us. Hail Mary,